I got the invitation to go on this Armed Lutheran radio show, though. You know this guy? Have you seen this? There's two things that I would like to say that make me feel safe. Number one, the fact that there is a radio show called the Armed Lutheran Podcast somewhere in the world. That makes me feel safe.
Bringing you law, gospel, and guns. This is Armed Lutheran Radio.
Welcome to Armed Lutheran Radio, a show about guns, hunting, competitive shooting, and the natural right of self-defense and what God's Word says about the issues surrounding gun rights and gun ownership. I'm your host, Lloyd Bailey, the Armed Lutheran, and this is, I have no idea what episode this is. I think it's episode 478. Wow, I'm 20 ahead of myself. Good Lord. This is 458, not 478. Lord. So welcome aboard, everyone. Glad to have you with us. I have no idea what's going on. Pastor John Bennett joins us. It's been a while since we've been together. How are you, sir?
Busy. Life has just been insane. I had my oldest daughter heads to college next Wednesday. We head out. And I am starting to serve a vacancy come Monday.
Okay.
And it's a relatively large church. It's the same church where my wife teaches school, St. Paul's in Truman, Minnesota. So, yeah, so much for those working one day a week deals. I guess the dream is over.
I actually tried to fit that joke into the book, into my new book, when reintroducing your character. And you've done vacancies before, I believe.
Yes.
How big a difference is this, and compared to, I know the joke about one day a week, but how much, for those who don't understand maybe what this responsibility entails, how much does this change what you're currently doing? And, you know, like, how far away are we talking? And you said it's a larger church, so a lot more people to go visit, I assume?
Yeah, about a dozen shut-ins, and that's counting couples and individuals. So I'm not counting each couple as two, but some of them, they're in the same facilities, so that might make it a little bit easier. The biggest thing is probably going to be shut-ins, but also they've got the parochial school, so I'll be doing switching off and on with the principal with doing the chapel services and doing office hours there and teaching confirmation class 2 days a week. And then, of course, Sunday mornings. So the congregation is probably, 3 times the size of Willow Creek. I don't know what, that's something I've never even bothered to look up. I don't know what their average Sunday morning attendance is.
And it's always a little misleading when you see the number of actual members versus, it doesn't really tell you how many show up and how many are just still on the rolls because they've all, haven't been cleaned up.
Yeah. Well, and I know they're a very active congregation. I've been involved with the school side of things. I've been volunteering to do their technology stuff for as long as I can remember. Which it's one of those things where part of me is saying, boy, I really wish I would have never said I knew anything about anything. Because I just got finished getting all their student laptops, all 50 of their student laptops updated and ready to go for the school year. So that was fun. But their average weekly attendance is 112. So that it's about roughly twice of what Willow Creek is as far as average attendance goes.
Okay. So when you're doing a vacancy like this, do you tend to have to do a sermon one place, or officiate at Willow Creek, and then or Willow Creek, as you say, and then run across town to the vacancy place and do it all over again? Or is
pretty much?
Okay.
Yeah. I mean,
you just stagger the start times.
Yeah. So we'll have church and you know whether or not somebody is from Willow Creek if they pronounce it Willow Creek or Willow Creek. So, I growing up in Los Angeles, it makes me feel like I'm some sort of a hick saying Willow Creek. But I've come to accept the reality. So,
well,
yeah, but no, it's same sermon, relatively the same service. So it'll be good. It'll be good. I'm looking forward to doing it. This is, I think, my 4th vacancy in 20 years.
Okay.
The shortest one was only 3 months, and longest one was 4 years. So it's one of those things where you never know. People at Willow Creek were asking, well, how long will the vacancy last? And I said, well, could be 5 months, could be 5 years. You never know.
Right.
There's churches out there. We've got churches in this area that have been vacant for over 3 years. There's a shortage of roughly 1,000 pastors, and there's an estimated 1,000 pastors who are expected to retire in the next 10 years. So if your church has a pastor, consider yourself fortunate.
Right.
If you are a pastor, expect to be busier as time goes by, because to me, the solution is going to be churches are going to have to partner with each other and share pastors. That's the only way through it.
Yeah.
Every retired pastor I know is currently serving a vacancy.
I've heard different things, and some of them troubling, about the solution to this problem. The idea of pumping out pastors faster from seminaries, or sort of bypassing that whole process somehow to create some sort of pseudo pastoral office that can fill in. What's this from your perspective? What's the solution? I mean, it's not a small thing, and it's nationwide.
Yeah. There are a lot of people that try to advocate for this SMP program. I am opposed to the SMP program. I don't think that we should.
What does that acronym stand for?
SMP is Specific Ministry Pastor.
Gotcha. Okay.
And the way the program works, and this isn't in any way to put those guys down, because they want to serve the Lord and serve in their congregation. But the way it typically works is that you remain in your home church, you take distance learning courses, you may take a couple intensives where you'll travel to the seminary for a couple weeks at a time, and then you get ordained. The problem is that there is a great deal of pastoral formation that takes place in a residential seminary setting. When you're sitting there in the cafeteria at lunch, having theological discussions with your classmates, and at St. Louis, it's a little bit different. At Fort Wayne, the professors do not have a separate dining hall. They eat with the students. So there's many times where you're sitting there with your professors discussing theology over a meal, and just being in that setting, there's no replacement for it.
Right.
The disciples sat at the feet of our Lord for 3 years. Mm-hmm. In seminary, it's 3 years. So it's plus the vicarage.
Right.
So, you wouldn't want to go to the cardiologist to do open heart surgery who had taken a correspondence course for 6 months on how to do open heart surgery. So if you wouldn't trust the care of your body to someone who has gone, taken shortcuts to get that certification, why would you entrust the care of your soul to someone who hasn't had the same training as someone who has gone through the standard program. And again, I don't want to put down those guys because they all have a heart for the pastoral office, but they haven't, in having discussions with these individuals, because we do have some in the circuit, that theologically they aren't as knowledgeable as you would expect a seminary graduate to be.
Right.
Even after they've been doing this for who knows how many years. So it's, the synod should not look at shortcuts to the ministry. It really isn't fair to the congregation, and it isn't fair to the pastor, because you're going to take a guy, you're going to give him inadequate training, then you're going to throw him into the church.
Yeah.
The other problem with this program is that you have churches, and that's the case within the circuit I'm in, that they want another pastor, so they'll just talk to some member of the congregation and say, hey, how would you like to go through this training? And then you can be one of us. Mm-hmm. And it's that really just kind of circumvents the whole call process as well. That, do you have someone who has felt the call to serve Christ by becoming a pastor, or is this just, hey, I really like talking about Jesus and I'll get paid to do it?
Right.
It's, yeah. So plus the commitment of men who are willing to leave behind everything except for their spouses and head to seminary and study. Now, you've got second career guys that'll leave behind 6-figure incomes to go to seminary. So,
right.
I don't know. And I'm sure that there's probably listeners that are not in agreement with me on this issue, but we wouldn't want a shortcut for doctors to resolve a shortage of doctors. Why would we want that with pastors?
Right.
So to me, the solution is, as we train pastors, make sure guys coming out of seminary know that it's okay to serve a vacancy. And if the opportunity presents itself, do it. Even though your call is to a specific congregation, there are other churches out there that are not blessed to have a regularly called pastor. On the other side of it too, I'm in an area where you have so many rural congregations, because you go back to the horse and buggy days, and there were large families and small farms, every section, and a section of land for those who aren't living in rural communities and don't know the nomenclature. A section of land is 1 square mile, 640 acres. And it used to be, you had 4 farms on each section of land, and each family had, 8 to 10 kids, mm-hmm. and nobody went more than 5 miles to get to church, because who wants to ride a horse and buggy for more than an hour as it is?
Right.
So you have all these churches that at one time that was a perfectly fine solution, because you'd have 150 people in church on a Sunday, and every other church in the area would have the same. And now you have maybe 50 if you're lucky. So the rural population has declined greatly in rural America, mm-hmm. especially in this area. And the churches are going to have to combine at some point and partner up. And if it's, one church decides that we're going to shut our doors and all our people are going to go to this other church, that praise be to God. But trying to make that decision, you can't force that decision on anybody, but it's something where if churches want a pastor, they're going to have to be creative about their solutions.
You're either going to have to combine, or you're going to have to find a way to find a pastor who's willing to share or work in multiple congregations. And then you're going to have the folks who are grumpy about, but we don't want to do a different start time. We're so used to, and then you have all that stuff. You're just going to have to be more, like you said, you're going to have to be more creative. We've kind of been in that situation at my church, where our situation as being a plant from another established congregation, we've had a difficulty in the area that we're in, because it's one of the most rapidly growing areas of the country, fastest growing areas of the country, and finding a place to build a church or even to rent a church has been difficult, to say the least.
I can't imagine what the property costs are now. So if you wanted a church wanted to buy a piece of property, in those areas where they're so rapidly growing, they may decide, well, we really can't afford this. Let's find an old rundown building that we could renovate.
Yep. And we've been, this will be we just moved. This will be the fourth place that we've been in since the church was planted. And that was 8 years ago, 6 years ago now. So it's been a while. Wow. It hasn't been long, but we've been through a number of, we started out renting a space. And then we found a place that was just ours. So we were renting a conference area at a local hotel, and then we transitioned to a place of our own that we were renting. But the cost of renting it, because it was zoned for retail, meant it was eating up so much of our budget that we decided we had to find somewhere else. And then we found somewhere else. And then that place decided, well, I could do something more profitable with this property. So how about y'all just find somewhere else? So we are now sharing, praise be to God, we're sharing with another church, although not Lutheran. So we now have actually a church space. It's actually purpose built for a church. So thanks be to God for that. So yeah, because we have not had that before. It's been, for the first 4 years, it was, somebody showing up Sunday morning to rearrange all the furniture and bring in all of the accoutrements that are required for a church service, and then packing it all up at the end and rolling it back out and putting it in storage. And then 4 years in a space that was way more expensive than we could afford, but it was at least our own space. And then now we actually have a church of our own, but it's been a challenge, and I'm sure we're not unique in that. I'm sure that kind of thing is happening all over the country. So,
it absolutely is. Yeah. Is Clint Stark still your pastor?
He is.
Good deal.
Excellent pastor. Has been, and is and like yourself, a contributor to the wonderful book, Duty to Defend. See how I got that plug in there. There was something that something you just said made me think. You were talking about this SMP program, and it makes me think of this. It kind of made me think about this idea of credentials and expertise in this country that, for some reason, I think since COVID probably, that we've had this sort of, I don't know whether it's disdain, but we don't seem to, I think COVID made us as Americans less trusting of experts and more willing to accept the input or I've seen a number of things. I don't know whether you saw, who Douglas Murray is? The author.
Name sounds familiar, but
English guy, wrote The Strange Death of Europe and War on the West, and most recently Democracies and Death Cults. And
I think I've seen interviews with him in various podcasters.
Yeah. Well, he was on Rogan recently. Well, I don't know if it's been recent. It was several months ago. And Rogan had him on, but also brought on a kind of an anti-Semitic dude, a comedian who wanted to comment on the Gaza situation. And it ended up being Rogan and this comedian guy basically tag teaming Douglas Murray, who's been on the ground in Israel. He's been on the ground in Gaza. He's been there. He's seen it. He knows what he writes and talks about. And this comedian guy basically had completely different ideas about how things are going there and what's happening and how everything works. And when asked, well, have you been there? Rogan and the comedian and basically all of Rogan's followers basically piled on Murray for suggesting that having some sort of expertise is important. And that you somehow can't have an opinion, or that the idea that because you are saying, well, I've been there, I know what I'm talking about, that you're somehow discounting other people's opinions, which Murray was not doing. He was just saying, okay, it's fine that you have your own opinion, but you don't know what you're talking about. And everyone in the world decided to have a conniption and take exception to that. What you were talking about with the SMP program kind of made me think about that, the idea that, well, maybe it's not it kind of feeds into the same idea that, well, is it really that important that we have somebody, go to seminary and go through vicarage and all of that when you can just do this alternate thing, which seems to me like maybe a way to weed out people from going to seminary, right? You go through this SMP online training and see if it's actually something you're actually cut out to do before you actually apply to go to seminary, not before you go and actually serve as a pastor. What are your thoughts on the way COVID has affected our view on sort of expertise and how we fix that? Because I think that's an issue that I don't know how we fix it, because government agencies, first and foremost, have done such a terrible disservice to the idea of experts, because they lied to us for so long about COVID.
Right. Yeah. And certainly the whole pandemic, or planned-demic, as some people call it, because it's really hard not to look at everything that happened and not think that this was all one massive conspiracy.
Yeah.
It was the most influential event in the history of the world since World War II, if you ask me. Just because it was one massive social experiment. And we still have people that have to don the COVID keffiyeh and wear their face mask, just to show their solidarity with a certain ideology.
Or they don't want to admit that they were wrong in the first place, and so they just keep...
Right. And, when it comes to, quote unquote, the experts as it related to COVID, it was very much about ideology, not reality. That it wasn't about the facts and the data. It was about, is your messaging on point with what the ruling party is saying is the correct messaging? When it comes to this whole idea of this anti-credentialing tendency that has really crept up, and it's mostly within conservative subculture, that it's this anti-credentialing mentality. When it comes to the church, it's important for people to say, okay, if we don't get someone who has had the proper training and for lack of a better term, the credentialing to indicate that they have gone through the proper training, what are the consequences? Much like with the example of a physician who's gotten his license out of a Cracker Jack box after going through a correspondence course or something. When it comes to theology, when it comes to the care of souls, when it comes to the pastoral office, what assurance do you have that, okay, this guy has had roughly the same amount of training as a 2-year pre-seminary student would have with theology? What assurance do I have that when he is speaking to me from the pulpit, everything he says is going to be in line with what God's word teaches? And at least from a Lutheran perspective, it's going to be in line with what is taught in the Lutheran Confessions in the Book of Concord.
Right.
What assurance are you going to have that he has gone through the courses that will cause him to think critically about theology rather than just regurgitating information that he's read elsewhere? I see this a lot with things that are posted on social media by other well-intentioned Lutheran pastors, where they'll promote ideas that are from a non-denominational neo-evangelical bent that is completely un-Lutheran,
Mm-hmm.
and is in many ways unscriptural, and their people will gobble it up because that's our pastor, and he's
supposed to know.
He's supposed to know these things and so forth.
Mm-hmm.
That's a big part of it. How, you want the assurance that the guy who is ministering to the deathbed of your grandmother has had the proper training to distinguish between truth and falsehood. You want a guy who's going to walk with you through the valley of the shadow of death. I mean, yes, I'm stealing, of course, from the 23rd Psalm, but Christ is the one who walks with us through that valley. Your pastor is there in the stead and by the command of Christ, and he is there to deliver to you the gifts of word and sacrament. The disciples were with Jesus for 3 years before he ascended and gave them the command to go throughout the world proclaiming the gospel. So why would you want to have a guy who has had very little training to be the one in care of your soul?
Doesn't this get sort of lead? I think this introduces the danger that the pastoral office becomes, especially in the Lutheran Church, more like the main line, more like especially I'm thinking certain strains of the Baptist Church, the fundamentalist idea of the jackleg, right, where there's no real difference between the layperson and the clergy. You start to blur that line, and if the guy spouts enough of the right words and sounds like he knows what he's talking about, but hasn't really fully been trained, the clergy or the laity you have the danger that the laity, like you said, just sort of laps it all up and believes whatever comes from the pulpit, whether it's the word of God or not, or whether it's I got the idea for my sermon off the back of a Cracker Jack box.
I think, and I don't know why I didn't think of this earlier, but the greatest examples that you will find of what happens when you have someone who does not have proper theological training, who is then given the responsibility of being the pastor of a church. I don't know what the guy's theological persuasion is, whether he's Roman Catholic or Lutheran or Calvinist, but the Facebook page, The Holy Nope, you might have seen some of his reels, but basically it's a guy who he just kind of pretends that he's going out the door on Sunday morning, and he goes into a random church, and then he plays just insane heresy that is being spouted by some quote unquote pastor. And you hear this drivel that's coming out of their mouths. And that's the danger of allowing men without the proper training to serve as pastors.
Mm-hmm. You end up with Stephen Furtick.
Yes. And Joel Osteen.
Or Joel Osteen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Carefalo Dollar, if you've heard of that guy.
Is he the one that needed the money for an airplane, or was that another guy?
What was his name? No, there was, well, he was one of them, I believe. There was, I can't think of his name now. Super heretical guy recently died. I can't remember his name, but anyway, but he was always saying, I need a new plane to go overseas to take the gospel.
To spread the gospel. Yeah.
Yeah, of course you can't fly commercial and use those millions of dollars to, I don't know, maybe feed the poor,
Right.
maybe you can use that money to actually build a church for poor people in Africa as opposed to jet setting across the globe.
Yep.
At least the guy's nom de plume, he's honest about what he's in it for.
Yeah. It's fitting. It's totally fitting name. Thoughts on what's going on in the country at the moment? We're seeing a rise, and I think of left-wing violence, which I think, if I'm not to put words in your mouth, but I think we expected worse at the beginning of the Trump administration or after the election, but I think it's slowly starting to ramp back up.
Well, it's all because Trump is Hitler. That's why we're having this violence, right?
Right.
Gosh. It's just absolutely mind-numbingly stupid that you take a look at what's happening with DC. You have, and there's going to be an investigation in how they were reporting their data. And this was covered on, I don't remember whose podcast. It might have been Ben Shapiro or one of those. It was someone on the Daily Wire. But what they were doing is they were taking violent crime like assault with a deadly weapon, and they were recategorizing it as just, first degree felony assault, which is reported differently to the FBI.
Right.
So that when they said, oh yeah, we've had I think it was 2023 to 2024, they claimed a 35% drop in violent crime. And then 2024 to 2025, they claimed a 26%. I'm pretty sure those were the numbers. And the reason that they were claiming that is because they were incorrectly reporting the data to the FBI. They also had high-ranking police officers, whether it was captains or sergeants or whatnot, that were tasked with going to the scenes of these violent crimes and recategorizing it as, rather than someone being assaulted, it was a transportation of an injured person to the hospital. Things like that, where they would intentionally scale down the severity of whatever was reported, or they would be undercharging criminals. So let's say you bludgeon someone to death with a baseball bat, and instead they would just tag it as misdemeanor assault.
Right.
That's how they got those numbers.
Or as the Babylon Bee said in a recent headline, Democrat mayors report violent crime down 40% since they redefined violent and crime.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly what's happened. And that's not even satire. That's just reality. So now you have all sorts of pundits on the left talking about how this is fascism. This is just how it happened in Nazi Germany. Gosh, they've made Sydney Sweeney a Nazi now too,
Right.
Just because she appeared in an ad and because her butt looks nice in jeans,
Which I
just
had no problem with when it was Beyonce.
right. Anybody who wasn't of the Caucasian persuasion. They could appear in any ad with as much or little clothing as they wanted, and of course, black is beautiful, but it can't be beautiful if you're white, I guess.
Apparently not.
So the left is right now, they are circling the toilet and ready to go down the drain.
They're just on
now
the
they've
wrong
got the
side
problem.
of every 80-20 issue in this country, which is mind-boggling.
Yeah. Well, I think one of the most telling things, aside from what's happening in DC, and I think that's just too easy to talk about, but you look at what's happening with this Zohran Mamdani, who's running for mayor of New York City.
Oh, yeah.
The guy is an out-and-out communist. There's no way around it. He has
Blatant
come
Jew
out and
hater.
stated that he is a blatant Jew hater. He is opposed to the ownership of private property, and he's running and will very likely be elected to be the mayor of the financial capital of the world. And you look at how Democrats are responding to this, that you have pundits who are asking people like Nancy Pelosi, hey, what are your thoughts on Zoran Mondani? Oh, I haven't given it much thought. My focus is on my district and that kind of thing.
Right.
Where
we don't want to say anything because
dodging it.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, you got the AOCs who they would endorse Joseph Stalin himself as he stood atop a stack of the 90 million bodies that he's responsible for killing with the communist revolution in Russia.
Elizabeth Warren,
because she's Elizabeth Warren. Yeah, you have the people who are trying to be relevant in the age of leftism when they haven't been relevant for years. But you see a lot of these people who are just, even Cory Booker tried to dodge the whole issue with Zoran Mondani. So they can't bring themselves to call him out and condemn him because they're afraid that somehow or another they're going to lose support. And the problem is that the more radical the base of their party becomes, the more their general appeal to the public is diminished. And if they keep going down this path, I think we'll have Republican majority for generations to come if it keeps going this way.
I agree. I don't see how. I would be shocked if the trend, it's always the trend that the midterm election goes the way of the party out of power. I would be shocked with the positions that the Democrat Party continues to take. They continue to do the whole, it's the end of democracy stuff and Trump's Nazi and Trump's Hitler. And nobody's buying any of that. And they're defending, they're all up in arms about, opposed to crackdowns on crime, opposed to crackdowns on, illegal immigration, which are, as I said, 80-20 issues in this country. And they just continue to shoot themselves in the foot. I don't see how that midterm trend happens this time.
No. Well, and just look how stupid they're being about redistricting.
Oh, God.
I mean, yeah. You've got them wetting themselves over what's happening in Texas.
It's the end of democracy because of what they're doing.
Yeah. But when you look at the redistricting map that they drew in California and in Illinois, I mean, it looks like a toddler was just randomly finger painting on paper with the way those districts are drawn. It's when you have California, which as a whole usually votes 40% Republican when it comes to national elections, yet they only have something like 18% of the congressional seats in that state. Mm-hmm. Something's terribly wrong. So they want to talk about Texas trying to overrepresent Republicans when it comes to districting, but they're not willing to talk about their own district maps.
No, definitely not. And I was amused at, Gavin Newsom threatening that, look, if Texas continues down this road, we'll just redistrict and we'll turn or, eliminate 5 Republican seats in California. And the response from Governor Abbott was excellent. It was like, okay, fine. You want to play that game? We'll eliminate 10 here in Texas. Because we have more Democrat seats in Texas than there are in California. Than there are Republicans in California.
Can legally do this.
Yeah.
California, their state constitution dictates when they can redistrict. And it's only every 10 years in California. And so Newsom is actually trying to violate the Constitution of the state of California in order to make a political point.
Yeah. The governor, what's his name, Pritzker, the fat guy from Illinois, was on, was it CNN or was it NBC? I think it was NBC. And Christine Welker actually did a random act of journalism and called him out on his hypocrisy when he kept going on about how this was the end of democracy. And like, doesn't this kind of ring hollow when, look, and she actually held up a picture of the districting of the gerrymandering in Illinois and called him out on it to his face. And I thought that was hilarious because he could not answer that question and was just like, well, that's not the question. That's not the question. And we'll move on. And he just kept going back to the talking points and got flustered because for once, a leftist journalist who is usually just, a cheerleader for these people actually called him out.
Right.
Which was nice to see. That made me think. I've got a new book coming sometime next week, the best construction, and I'm working on the reading guide, and it's just so happened that I had this open today. Not that I've had a chance to work on it, but I have this quote sitting on that I'd pasted into my reading guide to talk about one of the chapters in the book. And it's here's the quote. Princes are reminded of their office that they may know that they have been placed into their exalted position for the welfare of the people, for the sake of whom they should endure many things and work hard. I don't see a whole lot of that going on.
No, it's all about the welfare of the party when it comes to what's happening within Democrat strongholds. There's Republicans who are guilty of this too.
Sure, yeah,
but not to the degree that it is with with Democrats. Democrat politicians, by and large, only care about two things: remaining in power and raking in as many dollars as they can because of their position.
Yeah,
you look at Nancy Pelosi and how her investments have outperformed the best hedge funds there are out there by a very wide margin because she has committed insider trading. There's no two ways around it. That, she is, I think, the prime example of politicians whose primary concern is enriching themselves before it is helping your average American. The hand-wringing that went on because of increased border security, all the hand-wringing going on because of ICE raids in Los Angeles, it tells you what these people care about. The dirty little secret that isn't that great of a secret anymore, and this was, I can't remember which congressional rep this was. It was someone on the East Coast who basically said, yeah, we want these illegal immigrants in my district because it's going to increase, the representation of our state. Mm-hmm. That, they right now, the way that it is the census doesn't count citizens, it counts residents. So even if you're in a state illegally, you get counted when it comes to the electoral college and the apportioning of electoral votes. If you've got 5 million illegal immigrants in a state and those are all counted when it comes to the census, that's dang near a dozen congressional seats right there. Mm-hmm. No, I'm sorry, not a dozen. Well, what is it? 600,000, I think, is what it is for a congressional seat, something like that. It's so they have become less and less shy about stating what their goal is when it comes to illegal immigration. But it all comes down to two things: money and power. Those are the only things that they care about. And
to continue to defend that only makes it look like all you care that you care more about criminals than you do about actual citizens. And that's not necessarily definitionally true, but it ends up being the case because you're more concerned about how those illegals will affect your political fortunes than you are about whether those illegals will end up raping a 12-year-old.
Right.
DC mayor warns that Trump's crime-fighting measures will unfairly impact criminals.
Yeah.
Yep.
Absolutely insane.
It really is. I don't know whether there's any gun. Is there any gun news? We're all
not that I'm aware of.
There was the guy in New York that shooting in New York, and there was a school shooting somewhere recently, but I don't know that these. Does it feel to you like we've gotten to a point finally in this country that when these things happen and people start clutching their pearls and wringing their hands, that it doesn't really have the same impact that it used to? Like, I'm not saying that school shootings or mass shootings are not terrible. They certainly are. But it seemed like that the left could make more heyday at 5 years ago, 10 years ago, whenever one of these things would happen. And now I feel like the American people are at a point where they recognize it's not the gun. It's the criminals that you refuse to put in prison. It's the crazy people that you refuse to put in asylums or lock away, take their guns from them. And we're beyond being able to be gaslit anymore, I feel like, or we're getting to that point. It certainly doesn't feel like it's moving the needle the way it used to.
It really isn't. And I think what there is a spirit of desperation on the left, that they thought that if they would just call Trump Hitler enough times that people wouldn't vote for him. And there seems to be a spirit of panic, that their influence is slipping away.
Yes, it's a fantastic thing that they're losing influence, and I think, and Trump has, you're talking earlier about the census. Trump has vowed that the next census is not going to count illegals, and that's going to be huge in terms of representation in Congress, because I think, it's not just the 80-20 issues that they're losing on, but I don't think that they're representative. I think they're vastly represented in Congress because of the way we've allowed residents to be counted in the past instead of just citizens, which is what you would assume is the way it should be.
Right. Well, and it's going to be a blade that's going to cut both ways, because there's a number of illegal immigrants in Texas. I think there's even more in California, far more than in California than there are in Texas. This could mean states like Colorado, that the electorate might change in states like Colorado, because there's a lot of illegal immigrants in Colorado. And that's right now considered, well, it used to be a swing state. Now it's more of a purple state.
Right.
But who knows exactly what the outcome is going to be when it comes to these things. But when it comes to the Electoral College, we should only be counting citizens.
Yeah.
We should not be counting those who broke our nation's laws in order to be here.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we've gotten past most of the hullabaloo about the Epstein stuff. I think that's become a bit of a distraction, but we haven't gotten together since all that became the talk of the town. Your thoughts on the whole Epstein files thing, and will they release it? Won't they release it? And does it even matter anymore?
Well, it just came out today, and this is August 13th, that a judge refused the request to release the grand jury testimony regarding Ghislaine Maxwell.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
So that was today. And I still stand by my assertion that there are people who are being protected who were contacts of Epstein, who visited Rape Island, or whatever they want to call it now, that went on the Lolita Express. The fact that it was called the Lolita Express, and that was,
I don't know how you claim you didn't know what was going on. Yeah.
It's you still have liberal Democrats trying to make hay out of this whole situation, saying that, well, Trump won't unseal everything because he's in the all the documents. And if you believe that, you're an absolute moron, because that means that the Biden administration, who also had these files, had evidence that Trump was somehow involved with Epstein.
And didn't use
and
it.
Yet they never released it. Really?
I don't believe that for a minute.
So I don't think we're ever going to find out the full extent to which certain public figures were involved in that.
Yeah.
I mean, we do know that Bill Gates and Bill Clinton were individuals who were very much involved with Epstein.
Mhm.
If, granted now he's at the FBI, but Dan Bongino had mentioned in his podcast, and this was a year ago or more, that he knew someone who had been on a flight as a Secret Service agent that Clinton was on, and Clinton was going into a secluded part of the plane with underage girls. And that particular agent said that he would never work that detail again. So that's very telling.
I suspect the
that all
reason
comes out as circumstantial, but
right.
yeah.
I suspect. Tell me what you think of this. I suspect the reason that the feet just keep getting dragged in terms of releasing things is that it's not necessarily the politicians that are potentially in the files. It's the people who donate to the politicians.
Yeah.
And exposing that threatens the gravy train, shall we say, to the parties, both of them.
Yep. I am more than willing to entertain that theory. Either way, at this point, the public interest in it has dwindled significantly. Listening to Shapiro's podcast today, he was talking, I think it was Shapiro, he was talking about how the search queries for Epstein have dropped by 80%.
Yeah. I feel like that's exactly what, the government has wanted, is just, if we can hold out long enough, the American public doesn't have the attention span to maintain, the furor over this for very long. And eventually it'll die down and we'll move on to other things. And right now it's this stuff going on in DC. So I'm not suggesting that the thing in DC is somehow a distraction operation to keep people's minds off of the Epstein thing. That's not what I'm saying. But the news cycle, with so much stuff that goes on around the country and so many things that the Trump administration is having to sort of clean up after years of Democrat mismanagement, that something's going to come along that's going to take the headlines, and people are going to, whatever the story is of the day, whatever the fury is of the day, it's just going to sort of die out, given enough time and enough, other news stories coming along. All right. Well, I told you at the beginning this was going to be a show about nothing. It turned out to be a show about lots of nothings.
It was a smorgasbord of conversation.
That's right. And I hope our listeners enjoyed it as much as we enjoyed talking about it. What's coming up other than the vacancy? What's coming up for you in the near? Well, you're about to. You're not an empty nester yet.
No, not for about 6 more years.
6 more years.
But my oldest is going off to college, so the house will be a little more empty. And
yeah. How far away is she?
It's a 4.5-hour drive if you don't stop to pee.
Which I couldn't do, but
I don't think I'd ever make it as a trucker unless I had that pee jug sitting within arm's reach.
Yeah, definitely. I would never make a delivery on time I don't believe at this point. Well, thanks for taking the time. I'm sorry it's been so long trying to get us together again. Let's want to make sure we do this more often.
Absolutely.
Folks,
absolutely, and I've enjoyed it.
I have too, and I hope our listeners have as well. I'm sure just being able to hear us chuckle about this and that and nothing is entertaining enough, or at least I hope it is. Folks, if you have any comments or any questions, complaints about the quality or the lack thereof of today's show, please visit our feedback page, armedlutheran.us/feedback. Leave us a message. We would love to hear from you. If you have any thoughts about future nothings that we can ramble on about, we would love to hear that as well. Until we get together next week for episode 459, keep shooting, keep praying. We'll talk to you next time.
For show notes, be sure to visit our website at www.armedlutheran.us. Check out the Facebook page, The Armed Lutheran, or join our Facebook group, Fans of Armed Lutheran Radio. If you like what you hear, please leave us a comment on our feedback page at armedlutheran.us/feedback or a review on iTunes and let us know what you think. Thank you for listening to Armed Lutheran Radio.